Welcome to Brew Cheese, where we brew up the finest of cheese. I'm Micah, and thanks for tuning in. If you're new to our channel, we brew up Commander decks on a $50 budget, often with an unexpected twist. We had a bit of a long hiatus there due to some medical reasons and some technical ones, but we're back up and running. We'll also be kicking off a new series of $100 budget deck techs featuring my good friend Travis, so watch for that in the next few days. Today's video features a triple threat helmed by a commander you may not have seen before, and that's Homura, Human Ascendant. His A side is a 4/4 human that can't block, which is unfortunate as we're trying to get him to die, because that's when he rotates to his B side, Homura's Essence. This enchantment gives all of your creatures +2/+2, flying, and the ability to grow more powerful with each red that we can pump into it that turn. So what's our strategy when it comes to Homura? Strategy number 1 is to get him killed. We can do this by either just swinging him at someone and hoping the threat of commander damage forces them to block, or we have a few spells capable of dealing 4 damage to a creature. Once he's turned into an enchantment, we're going to take advantage of the abilities granted, primarily using Infect, Double Strike, or even some creatures that can't be blocked at all. And finally, we're going to keep the ground clear through board wipes that spare only creatures with flying, while also keeping the skies clear through a variety of evil tricks. First up in our rant package is Star Compass, which enters tapped and taps for red in this deck, so long as we control a mountain. Sphere of the Suns has 3 charge counters on it when it enters tapped, and we can tap and remove one of those counters to produce red. Commander Sphere taps for red and gives us the option to sacrifice it for a card draw. Heraldic Banner gives all of our red creatures +1/+0 and taps for red. Iron Mirror taps for red mana and gives us another body should we need it. Runaway Steamkin is never going back, wrong way on a one-way track. It gets a +1/+1 counter with every red spell we cast, to a max of 3 of those counters. We can remove 3 +1/+1 counters from it to add 3 red. Battle Hymn gives us a one-time burst of red mana, 1 for each creature we control. With this deck, a burst is all we need. Mana Geyser provides a red mana for each tapped land our opponents control, good for that burst mana that I mentioned. Seething Song lets us turn a 3 mana investment into 5 mana, and Ironcrag Feet turns our 4 mana into 7. We're most likely using that to fuel our commander's ability, so the 1 more spell restriction won't hurt us very much. The first card in our draw suite is Furious Rise. So long as we have a creature with power 4 or more at our end step, we get to exile the top card of our library, and we have until our next exile to play it. There's quite a few creatures in here that naturally have power 4, but keep in mind we'll be pumping up 1 or 2 lucky creatures in our turn. Outpost Siege exiles a card at our upkeep and gives us until the end of turn to play that card. It has another mode, but we won't be using it for this deck. Chandra, Fire Artisan, lets us +1 her to exile the top card of our library, and we have until the end of the turn to play it. We can also -7 her to do the same with the top 7 cards of our library. She also deals damage to an opponent or planeswalker whenever a loyalty counter is removed. Chandra, Pyromaster, also gives us the same exile-based card draw with her 0 ability, but also gives us the option to ping a player and one of their creatures with her +1, rendering the creature unable to block, helping our creatures to get through unhindered. Finally, we can -7 her to exile the top 10 of our library and copy an instant or sorcery from those for free. Vance's Blasting Cannon exiles a card off our library at the beginning of our upkeep, and so long as it's a non-land card, we can play it this turn. When we cast our 3rd spell in a turn, we can opt to transform it into Spitfire Bastion, which taps for red or lets us pay 3 mana into it to deal 3 damage to any target. Handy for ramp if we don't need the extra card draw every turn, and the 3 damage on demand often comes in handy. Oracle's Vault lets us pay 2 into it and tap it to exile the top card of our library, and we have until end of turn to play it. Once we've activated this ability 3 times, we get to cast that card without paying for it. Ghirapur Orrery lets each player play an additional land on their turns. This may appear to benefit everyone, but we need all the ramp we can get, and there's a good chance one of our draw effects will have a land exiled that we can play. It also lets anyone who is empty-handed at their upkeep draw 3 cards. Considering most of our other card draw is exile-based, we'll likely be empty-handed more than the other players. Experimental Frenzy lets us look at and play the top card of our library, but we can't play cards from our hand. This says nothing about cards from exile, so this won't interfere with our other draw. We can pay 3 in a red to destroy the frenzy when we've gotten a card in hand that we need. The first threat that Homura lends his abilities to well is Infect, something that nobody is going to expect out of a mono-red deck. The goal with our Infect creatures, and really any of our creatures, is to get through 1 or maybe 2 hits on an opponent and make that enough to close out the game, by pumping red mana into its power to make it a 1-hit KO. Having flying helps with evasion, and it already gets a +2/+2 to help it on its way. Ichor Mirror is a 1/1 with Infect that gets a +2 bump to power and toughness whenever it's blocked. Necropede is a 1/1 with Infect, and when it dies, we put a -1/-1 counter on any creature. Plague Mirror is a 1/1 also with Infect, and it can help us with early game mana production by producing colorless for us. Phyrexian Digester is a 2/1 with Infect, and Razor Swine is a 2/1 with both First Strike and Infect. Core Prowler is a 2/2 with Infect, and when it dies, we proliferate. Speaking of proliferating, we're running Contagion Clasp, which lets us pay 4 and tap it to do just that. It also puts a -1/-1 counter on a creature when it enters the battlefield. Corpse Cur is a 2/2 with Infect, and when it enters the battlefield, we can return a creature with Infect from our graveyard to our hand. Finally, there's Phyrexian Juggernaut, which is a 5/5 with Infect, and it has to attack each turn if able. Not quite as deadly an option as Infect, but still taking great advantage of Homura's ability to pump up our creature's power, we're making use of some double strike creatures to double dip on that payment. Stormfleet Swashbuckler has Ascend, meaning that if we have 10 permanents out at any time, we get the city's blessing for the game, and it has double strike so long as we do have that city's blessing. The deck goes heavy on permanents, so that's very likely to happen in an average game. Two-Headed Cerberus and Raging Redcap are both 1/2s with double strike. Markov Blademaster is a 1/1 with double strike, and every time it hits a player, it gets a +1/+1 counter. Prophetic Flamespeaker is a 1/3 with both double strike and trample, and if it deals combat damage to a player, we exile the top card of our library and we can play it this turn, helping us out with our draw power. Scrapper Champion is a 2/2 with double strike, and it gives us 2 energy when it comes into play. Likely we'll be using that 2 energy the first time it attacks to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Spiraling Duelist is a 3/1, and it has double strike so long as we have 3 or more artifacts out. The deck also runs heavy on artifacts, so this is easily doable in an average game. Finally, there's Lightning Runner, a 2/2 with double strike and haste. It gives us 2 energy when it attacks, and we can pay 8 energy to untap all our creatures and get another combat step this turn. The third threat is a category, albeit a small one, that makes for nearly unblockable threats when combined with our commander. Nat Alley Creeper is a 3/1 that cannot be blocked by creatures with flying. Since our commander grants our stuff flying, this leaves only creatures with reach that are able to block the creeper. Dust Corona is a creature aura that gives +2/+0 and makes the creature unblockable by creatures with flying. And Skyblinder Staff gives a +1/+0 and this same ability. We have some synergistic stuff to make sure that we get that extra oomph whenever necessary. Aki Lava Runner is a 1/1 with haste, and when it deals combat damage to a player, we flip it. The flip side, Tok Tok Volcanoborn, gives all of our red sources a +1 damage bonus, and has protection from red itself. Although this primarily only helps our double strike creatures since most of our infectors are colorless, it also helps out our removal and our board wipes, which we'll get to shortly. Dictate of the Twin Gods has flash, and it doubles all damage from all sources. Although this will benefit our opponents, it's going to benefit us much more given the strategy we're employing. Embermaw Hellion is a 4/5 with trample, giving us another potential attacker if need be. It also bumps all of our other red sources of damage up by 1. Inquisitor's Flail doubles the damage that the equipped creature deals and takes, but there's a great chance we'll have a nice evasive creature that we can get through for lethal with this. Insult makes damage non-preventable this turn and doubles all of our damage sources this turn as well. The injury half can help us with removal if need be, dealing 2 damage to a creature and 2 to a player. Jaya Venerated Fire Mage bumps up all of our other red sources of damage by 1 and can be ticked down by 2 to deal 2 to any target. Mudslide is an enchantment that prevents creatures without flying from untapping, making their owners pay 2 per creature to untap them in their upkeep. Given that all of our creatures will have flying so long as we can keep our commander, this won't affect us very much. Rapacious One is a 5/4 with trample, and it allows us to employ a go wide strategy if we need to, or produces additional mana for us. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we create that many 0/1 Eldrazi spawn tokens that can be sacrificed for colorless. Given that we can pump red mana into this to increase its power, we get some return on that investment in the forms of hordes of 0/1 spawn, which all turn into 2/3 flyers thanks to our commander, or they can be stored up and sacrificed whenever needed in order to preserve as much of our red mana as possible for combat, so we can use that colorless to cast other stuff. Sarkhan the Dragon Speaker does a lot for the deck, so it was difficult to put it into any one category. First, it can turn into a 4/4 dragon with flying, indestructible, and haste, giving us an additional attacker if need be. Second, it can deal 4 damage to any creature, letting us remove a possible threat or kill our commander in order to flip it. Finally, it can create an emblem for us that draws us 2 additional cards in our draw step, but we have to discard to 0 at the end of the turn. We can pay 2 into Soulbright Flamekin to give a creature trample this turn. If we've paid exactly 6 into it this turn, we add 8 red to our mana pool, giving us a bit of ramp in the ability to convert some of our colorless into red, and giving our creatures trample in the meantime. Our removal kicks off with Chaos Warp, which shuffles any permanent into its owner's library, and then they flip over the top card. If it's a permanent, they get it for free. Dizzying Gaze is an underappreciated enchantment for red, acting as a 1-mana anti-aircraft cannon. For each red we pay into it, we deal 1 damage to any creature with flying. With only a minimum of mana expenditure, we can keep the skies clear for our troops to get in unhindered. Flame Slash deals 4 damage to a creature, which is not coincidentally what we need to kill our commander. Or we can remove a threat, that too. Galvanic Blast deals 2 damage to any target, or 4 if we have 3 or more artifacts. Heat Ray at a red and X deals X damage to target creature at instant speed. Predator Flagship acts as a great reusable creature removal and as a way to keep the skies clear. For 2, we give a creature flying until end of turn, or for 5 and a tap, we destroy target creature with flying. Reckless Airstrike deals 3 damage to a creature with flying, or allows us to destroy an artifact. Tears of Valakut deals 5 damage to a creature with flying and can't be countered. Volt Charge deals 3 damage to any target and proliferates, helping our Infect strategy. Red affords us some nice board wipes, given that most hit non-flying creatures, leaving our forces untouched. Breath of Daragaz deals 1 or 4 damage to all non-flying creatures and each player, depending on if it was kicked or not. Earthquake for a red and X deals X damage to each player and each non-flying creature. Magma Quake is the same, but adds an extra red for instant speed. Molten Disaster for 2 red and X deals X to each creature on the ground and to each player. If we pay an additional red into it, we give it split second, making it effectively uncounterable. Finally, there's Ryusei the Falling Star, which provides us a 5/5 body for attacking, or when it dies, it deals 5 damage to each non-flying creature. Castle Embereth kicks off our mana base, coming in untapped if we control a mountain, and tapping for a red itself. We can also pay 2 red and 1 to tap it to give all of our creatures +1/+0 until end of turn, which is handy if we have 4 or more attackers and want to pump them all for slightly cheaper than our commander affords. Dwarven Mine enters untapped if we have 3 or more mountains, and when it enters, so long as it did so untapped, gives us a 1/1 dwarf token, handy if we need an extra blocker or another body to attack in the air. Dwarven Ruins enters tapped and taps for red. It can be sacrificed for 2 red for when we need the extra burst more than we need the land. Karn's Bastion taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap it to proliferate, which is handy for our Infect strategy. Teetering Peaks enters tapped and produces red, and gives a creature +2/+0 when it enters. The remainder of our mana base consists of 32 mountains. The total cost for this deck came up to $40.49. These prices are powered by TCG Player, not a sponsor, using optimized pricing. The total does include shipping and allows for cards of any condition. Thank you for watching, and if you like what we're doing here, subscribe or share this video with a friend, or leave a comment telling us what we missed or what you'd like to see in the future. See you again next video.